broadcasts. Wonderful. So we are just now waiting for people to join online. People are starting to come on, which is great. Let's give it a minute. Here we go. People's computers have to warm up as we come online. Okay, so I think we might start. So I want to say hello and welcome everyone to this wonderful webinar that we're doing from Jerusalem with Anat Hoffman. I want to start by saying thank you, a really big thank you firstly to Anat for joining University of Judaism, to Emmanuel Synagogue in Sydney for hosting us, and also to Temple Beth Israel in Melbourne for hosting another event. We couldn't have put this together without their help and partnership, so thank you very much to them. Before I get to Anat, if this is your first time at an NIF event, I just wanted to say 2 seconds about what we are. NIF is a partnership of Israelis and diaspora Jews who work to fulfill the vision of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. And we do so by promoting freedom, equality, and democracy for all Israelis. And we also foster discussions like this in Australia. One of the things we've done recently is with people seeking asylum and refugees, the Israeli government is trying to now deport about 38,000 people seeking asylum, mostly from Eritrea and Sudan. And so our funding, we sent about $20,000 worth of funding just 2 weeks ago to that community in order to help stop the deportation, something we're very proud of. I'll introduce Anat now. There were 3 things to show the gravitas of Anat and to show an years. The first, 13, was among Israel's 50 most influential people last year, according to the Jerusalem Post. And this year, soon will be announced by Mariv as one of the women, most influential women over the last 70 years since Israel's establishment. So these are some pretty impressive credentials. We're very proud of her because of the work that she's done with Women of the Wall, Nashot Kotel, and with the Israel Religious Action Center, and of course before that on the Jerusalem City Council as well. So I want to start, I guess, by talking about Nashot HaKotel and by speaking, again, getting you to say a little bit about what your genesis was with the issue and how did it come to be?
So first, Shalom Australia, and happy Purim. Tomorrow, Women of the Wall will be reading Megillah. This is the Megillah we'll be reading. It's 350 years old. It's been running in my family. 5 words. אחר הדברים האלה, גידל המלך אחשוורוש את המן. Okay, we got 5 words in. I wanted to share with you the caricature in Haaretz today. It has to do with corruption. But look at it. It's so quaint and so Israeli. You see? It is Netanyahu and his wife, Sarah. And she's asking, what? There is no Mishloach Manot today? You have to know the Megillah, and you have to appreciate how the past is speaking in the present with this caricature. You asked about the Women of the Wall. I joined the Women of the Wall as a conference on women's empowerment. I wasn't going to join the North American and Canadian women who decided to go to the Kotel and pray for the safety of Israel. And I wasn't going to join them because it seemed to me such a romantic notion. It was on the 9th of December, 1988. However, one of these women asked me for a folding table. The hotel, the Hyatt, would not rent her a folding table, and she needed a folding table to put the Torah scroll on top of it, because as the women, there is no table for a Torah scroll. How I joined the Women of the Wall. I schlepped the folding table. As a social activist, I own a folding table. And when she asked me Actually, she asked me with this American accent that the one word I didn't understand, Hebrew word. She said, we need a folding table for the Torah. The word Torah, I couldn't figure out what she's talking about. One American, North American, Australian, Canadian, there were participants from all over the Jewish world in that first prayer. Watching them being abused by the powers that be is what caused women of the wall to be born in Jerusalem. And now we are at the women's section, and we'll be reading tomorrow, as I said, we'll be reading the whole Megillah, commemorating both Esther and commemorating Vashti, one who spoke out, said no to the king directly, and the other took some coaxing before she got to say no to the king. But I think Women of the Wall remain a group that says no to the king when the king is so absolutely wrong.
How can you update us a little bit about some of the kind of really important fights that have been happening and how you've got the advances over the years, over the 30 years, but particularly in the last couple of years, in order to allow, you said that tomorrow you're going at 10 a.m. to the Kotel and you'll read the Megillah. That, you know, before I'm guessing would have been impossible. But now it's something that when I asked you, you just said you were blasé about it. So of course we're doing it. Like there's no question. So can you tell us what the development was to get to that point?
Yeah, well, I think what characterizes Women of the Wall, you as NIF supporters, you support, is that we refuse to habituate. We refuse to get used to losing or not having bases. We're not willing. Our greatest rival is not the government regulations and the orthodox monopoly. I think our greatest rival is apathy. And I think as a Jewish community abroad, you too, I think your greatest rival is apathy, people not caring, or worse, people saying, oh, we used to care, but we've learned some helplessness along the way. Nothing can be done about it. And giving up. I think that is the worst part. For bad things to happen, good people just have to give up and be quiet and let things roll. And you and I share the same passion not to fall asleep, not to get used to things. What happened with the Women of the Wall is that the Jerusalem police started arresting us in 2013 for doing what is so normal as praying out loud, putting on a towel, phylacteries, reading Torah. All these activities are contrary to local custom and the feelings of others. It took a brilliant judge on the Israeli Magistrate Court here to ask, who decides local custom actually? We and the police and everybody assumed that the rabbi of the wall, Rabbi Shmuel Rabinovich, he's in charge of local custom. Well, Judge Sobel looked into it and found that the government of Israel has actually never given him the authority to decide local custom. Well, if the rabbi doesn't decide local custom, then he can't decide that what we're doing is against local custom and that it offends the feelings of others. The Sobel decision from April 2013 has changed reality at the wall. Since the rabbi does not have the authority to decide local custom, Women of the Wall, who've been there for 30 of the 50 years that the wall has been in Israeli hands, are local custom. That's the big thing. And if we are local custom, it's our custom to read Megillah tomorrow at 10 in the morning.
Are there still custom, they don't have the right to tell you can't do it. I imagine there is still significant opposition from people praying there who don't like your presence and don't appreciate that your custom is local now after 30 years.
Yes, there are scuffles and there is some violence, and it is sometimes unpleasant to go to the wall with the women of the wall and fight for the right to pray. Surprisingly, as members think that if we only went to a retreat and if we were only in the forest or the desert in the absolute quiet of nature, we're going to have kavanah, we're going to have prayer with great focus. Here's the news. In the great turmoil at the wall, when people are hurling insults at you and spitting at you, I have kavanah, and so are my sisters. We've been able to develop prayer of great meaning in the midst of attacks. How does that happen? A divine miracle. I don't know. But you'll see that if you join us at the wall, you will find that it's one of the most meaningful prayers you've ever had in the midst of all this turmoil. So not that retreats are not important, but praying with us has great meaning. I disagree with the Americans that have devoted their lives to the pursuit of happiness. I'm with the rest of the world who believes in the pursuit of meaning. I think that fighting for a better Israel gives my life a meaning, and I partner with you because you share the same value. There's only one Jewish state all over the planet. There's just one, and we have to make the best of it. And we are partners in making sure that Israel lives up to its own dream. And our dream is about equality, pluralism, and tolerance. These are Jewish values. And even though you live down under, you share these values with us. And whenever you're miserable over Israel, think of the Israelis that absolutely share these values and believe that we have to fight together to make them real in Israel today.
So that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, and you spoke to it about before, about apathy, is that there is sometimes a hesitancy in Jewish communities around the world to speak up in opposition to Israeli government policy or to criticize the policy of Israel for fear that it will be misconstrued or kind of contribute to a global movement that does demonize Israel and does seek to delegitimize it. And how, I think that on this issue, actually, it's uncommon that there has been an ability to speak up and there has been a desire to speak up on this particular issue. We're actually also seeing it a little bit more with the current refugee situation in Israel, where the Jewish Agency has spoken out. Alan Dershowitz came out and said, basically, there's no way to avoid calling this policy anything other than racist. Why has this issue with Nashot HaKotel really minds of diaspora Jews?
I'm sorry to say I don't have insight why this one went under the radar. There's so many other things that I think should also be, you should voice your outrage at. But I want to say who silences us. And I think the ones that silence us the most are the Israelis. The Israelis say to you, if you live comfortably in Melbourne or Sydney or Perth or Auckland, you should shut up. Put up and shut up. Don't tell us what you policies, just pay. This is the least you can do for living in such safety over there. I think this is so unfair, and I think you should never be silenced by all. And 90 Israelis feel that it is crucial that diaspora Jews support Israel. And at the same poll, we asked them, and do you think Israelis should listen to what diaspora Jews have to say? 90% say no. Now, how does that work out? If we think it's crucial to have your support, how can we say that you need to be quiet about how we run our affairs? Now, I agree that people living in Sydney may not have all the information about some of the internal issues of Israel. I agree. But when we talk about basic values, what are the values of the Jewish state? Ethnocentricity, racism, chauvinism, Jewish values, or pluralism, tolerance, and equality. Every Jew has a place at the table. I think you have a divine duty to not give up on that seat. Us share these values are begging you are demanding from you, stay our partners on these issues. Women of the wall, maybe because we've been at it for 30 years, maybe because it's prayer we're fighting for, prayer. Maybe because of the violence against us, maybe because we sat in jail. I don't know what of the, maybe because we're women and we're women that were able to break all the partitions between ourselves. Remember, we are Reformed, conservative, and Orthodox women together. We are a group of sisters, even though we don't go to the same synagogue. Maybe because we were able to break the partition between ourselves and diaspora. We have sisters all over the world. There are sisters and brothers of Women of the Wall sitting in front of me right now. And maybe it is because we were able to break the final partition between us and men. There are men who are now Women of the Wall. The most recent group is 2,300 paratroopers, the liberators of the wall from 1967. They joined the Women of the Wall. They feel that the way the wall is run is so unlike what they would like to see. So maybe all these reasons together helped, but I would say don't stop at the Women of the Wall. This is an engine that can push many other cars. Because what the Women of the Wall are saying, there must be equality in Judaism. You can't hand the keys to the holiest site of the Jewish people to one minority zealot group. You can't give the keys to them. They abuse this power. There must be more than one way to be Jewish in Israel, more than one way to be a woman in Israel. It can't be criminalized. And to that engine, we add many more cars. For example, freedom of choice in marriage and divorce in Israel, freedom of choice in burial in Israel, freedom of choice in kashrut in Israel. How many ways to be kasher? Freedom of choice in conversion in Israel. And many other cars go after this in this train that's on its way to what's the dream of Israel, the dream of being a sane, democratic Jewish state on the planet.
I will say very quickly, I'm very proud to have my Nashot Kotel talit that I love wearing, and that I'm sure if you speak to those at Emmanuel and TPI, I'm sure they have a way to get as well. And if they're in touch with Nashot Kotel, I'm sure you can. Here we go. This is very.
That's the good part. Okay, this is Women of the Wall eat, and I love it that reports on other subversive acts and around the world where there's support for Women of the Wall. And so if you own one, wave to me. And if you don't, I'll send you one.
Yeah, I know it was my very small act of subversion to wear it to my local Chabad synagogue one time, but that was that was a very proud moment for me to walk in and say this was my important values. And I'm sure that there are plenty of people at home who pick out what I think made the most sense for me about why Nashot HaKotel had been so relevant to people, because it was something so personal, because it was something that they could see themselves doing, because it was something that they had their own experience with. The paratroopers who liberated Jerusalem in 1967 probably felt the same. It was a very personal experience going to the Kotel after so many years, and so that's why they're invested. And that's also why this is such an important issue and speaks to people, because they have their own experience in their family. So I want to pivot and something personal to issues of freedom of marriage and divorce and freedom of conversion, those things in those spheres.
Yeah. What you just said is that
Let's forget as well. Let me interrupt. Is that we can? There will be a time for questions at the end, which I forgot to mention. So if you're at home, you can type them in by pressing the Q&A button. And if you're at TBI or Emmanuel, we'll come to you for questions straight away as well. So I hope you're getting your questions ready. I apologize.
I think there's a theory that they look at everything Israel into dividing it into three categories. First, big category, things we deflect. Things that happen in Israel that are so complex and Israeli that you don't even get into. Things that reflect on you. Policies that Israel does that reflect on outrageous, that you feel something reflects on you in a way that makes you feel very proud. For example, Israelis invented ways. Israelis liberated the from Entebbe, Uganda. That makes you feel proud. Israel reaches 70 years, makes you feel proud. These things reflect on you positively. And there are things that reflect on you negatively. For example, the deportation of the 38,000 asylum seekers and refugees in Israel today, or women being arrested for wearing a talit in Israel. That reflects on you. That reflects terribly. But there are few things that actually affect you. And the issue of the conversion affects Jews all over the planet, because if your relatives who converted Reform Conservative cannot be married in Israel because the rabbis of Israel don't recognize them as Jewish, that affects you. So the small category of things that affect you, I think the Kotel gets in there, because when you visit Israel, if your way of davening, your way of prayer is something that is criminalized to the point that 6 months imprisonment, that's you. And so that might be useful. Yeah. Things that we deflect, things that reflect on us, and things that actually affect us, whether we live in Sydney or live in Jerusalem. These values of pluralism, tolerance, and equality are what the Israel Religious Action Center focuses on, and we have 5 issues that we work on. One of them is, of course, the conversion that I just talked about. I'm proud to tell you that every one of your relatives or yourselves who converted Reform Conservative will be recognized as a Jew by the State of Israel. We have a legal aid center for new immigrants, and it is run by an ex-Australian. Her name is Nicole Maor Center. She made Aliyah. She's a Netzer kid. She's the golden Australian kid. You could not have contributed more to Israel than to raise Nikki, one of the experts in Israel on issues of migration. She receives over 6,000, and I'm proud to tell you that she's completely self-sustaining. The clients pay, and it covers the staff in its entirety. That's saying a lot. When an NGO dependent on contributions into complete sustainability, amazing feat, and it took an Australian. She is an Ola, and she's helping Olim. She is an immigrant to Israel, and she's helping every year. So for those of you in Sydney who raising of Nicole Maor Center, it takes a village to raise a lawyer of such a standard. I am telling you in the names of over 60,000 people that she's helped so far. You have in this country by this one person. Another strategic goal of ours to fight for the recognition of our rabbis. Rabbis who are graduates of the Hebrew Union College or Leo Beck or the all the institutions they go to are not recognized as institutions of Jewish learning. This is the Hebrew word here, chutzpah, unbelievable chutzpah. Because as an ex-city councilor in Jerusalem, I visited some of the institutions that ordain Orthodox rabbis in Israel, and some of them, ladies and gentlemen, don't exist. Some of them are PO boxes. Some of them absolutely are not recognized by anybody. These organizations can ordain a rabbi, and the Hebrew Union College and the Seminary that are recognized all over the planet, the Pope recognized, they are not recognized by the State of Israel. This is outrageous. It means that all the thousands of rabbis on the planet who are not Orthodox are not recognized in Israel as a rabbi. They cannot officiate in a wedding. They cannot be witnesses in a divorce. They cannot convert. This is outrageous. It's got to be stopped. And we have many ways to fight it. But I would say one more thing. We fight for equality for women in the public sphere, particularly Orthodox women. I'd say in the last 5 to 10 years, we had more Orthodox clients than any other single. Orthodox women are the bravest. and they're fighting for their right. Walk in Beit Shemesh, they fight on the army without discrimination. They university and use the library without between women and men. So we fight for Orthodox women who are fighting for the public sphere in Israel, free and open to women. And finally, I would say 1/3 of our budget is fighting racism in Israel. Now, racism is particularly against the Arabs, the 1.2 million Israeli Arabs. Israel is with the highest percentage of Arabs in the world. That's 21% of our population, and we cannot engage in the sport of hating 21% of Israelis. And recently, we published a study called Heroes of Health. It's about heroes of health. What you see is Jews and Arabs refuse to be enemies. We found that the health system in Israel is unique in that there is very little racism there. Not that I wish it on you, but when you visit Israel, if you broke a leg, you go to an Israeli emergency room, you'll see what I'm talking about within a minute. Within 1 minute, an Arab nurse or an Arab employee or an Arab doctor, somebody is going to approach you and save your leg and save your life. And it's going to be one of the non-Jews of Israel who's saving a life. In fact, we found that in a given day, more Israeli Arabs saved Jewish lives than participated in terror since 1948, in every single day. The reason we turn to the health healing is, well, first, I think health is contagious. From the health system, the rest of Israel. How racist Israel is? We just opened the Racism Crisis Center in Israel, and we did it with your help, and I thank every one of you for helping us with that. And we want to document how many complaints we get and how prevalent is racism in Israel. We have 2 commercials coming out. They're on TV now. One is teaching you, if you are a witness to a hate crime or a victim of a hate crime, how to document it, how to hold your camera, what details does the police and we need to fight racism. Israel has phenomenal laws against racism. This is a good thing. We have excellent laws, however, barely implemented. Team helping people implement the law. Like this positive report, we're going to saying how prevalent is race minorities in Israel.
One of the videos, I think it was actually the launch video of the Racism Crisis Center. And what Anat was speaking about was that NIF Australia's funding last year went to the Racism Crisis Center, tens of thousands of our money from our donors and supporters to support this important work. So we were very proud to be part of that. And so that launch video, I found extremely powerful. We've posted on our social media and I think sent it out to all the people who get our emails, and I'll share it again with everyone on the call. It was my day and your day are different. And that when I, as an Ashkenazi male, wake up and I can rent an apartment, I can go to university, I can get a taxi. And this video is so powerful of an Ethiopian woman and an Arab man and a Russian woman trying to go about daily tasks, but the obstacles in front of them. And so having a place that they can turn to say, first of all, I now know how to document it because I've been taught by the center, but also I can receive counseling, legal support. I can be referred to wherever I need in order to try and gain a resolution. And that seemed to be, which is the newest video you've produced, the hardest thing about actually gaining a positive resolution is the lack of evidence and needing to get that. So in a place that we don't think of Israel as racist. We think of Israel sometimes as a land of milk and honey, and we like to sugarcoat things. But the reality is very different, and making sure that more sectors in Israel are more like the health sector requires vigilance. How do you go about kind of reinforcing that message that we need to be vigilant about something that exists and aspire to a better solution without, I guess, constantly falling back on Israel's a terrible place? Because we know it's not. How do we kind of walk that line?
So what we found in the Heroes of Health is that when there is racism in the hospitals, and there is, it is nipped in the bud immediately by the highest echelons in the hospital. And the reason is that they are teams from the very beginning. They're teams in medical school and they're teams in nursing school, and the teams are multiracial and they speak all the languages. And if you come to an emergency room in Israel this morning and you say, I don't want an Arab to touch my body, within 60 seconds, the head of the emergency room will come in and show you the door. Go to any other hospital, he'd say, you're going to have an Arab take care of you, or you're not going to have yourself being taken care of at all. They are a team. They cannot work not as a team. We look at the percentages of pharmacists and the nurses and doctors, and they exceed their percentage in the population, and they save our lives. And this is how we need to run every other system in our country. Racism is so unbecoming to anybody, but to the Jewish state, it is just shocking and something we need to nip in the bud. And I think that the Racism Crisis Center, which is going to help us document that this exists, and also have people face the natural consequences of their racism. Right now, rabbis, for example, incite for violence against minorities in Israel, and we have not been able to punish this. Not been able to. If they were saying the same thing in Arabic and they were Muslim leaders, they would have been in jail. So this is something that's very disturbing, and it has violent results.
Yeah, okay.
They're collecting garbage in Brachiaus. It's making a noise. We want people to, and we think this is going to reduce incidences. And as I said, we have excellent laws, and we're going to put them to work. These incitements have a facet in reality. Since 2010, we've counted 44 mosques and churches that were burnt and vandalized in Israel. The culprits were found only in one incident. 43 cases, they didn't find who did it. I'd like you to read a flyer that was distributed here in Jerusalem after a Palestinian boy, was beaten to a pulp for no reason. He was just walking by.
So this is the poster that I'll read, and we'll share maybe a link to this report afterwards, which I'm sure is online. So the poster says, "Dear Arab guy, we do not want you to get hurt. Our girls are dear to us. Just as you would not want a Jew to date your sister, so we are not willing for an Arab to date from our people. Just as you would do everything to prevent a Jew, we will do the same. If you plan on coming mall or the mall in Jerusalem to date Jewish girls, this isn't the place. You can walk around your own village and find girlfriends there, not here. Last week, an Arab man who wanted to find Jewish girls was injured. We do not want you to get hurt. Respect the honor of our girls, because this is a supreme concern for us." That's from a group called Lehava.
I just want to say that the assimilation between Jews and Arabs in Israel is almost an unheard of phenomenon. It's not like there's assimilation in the Jewish state and we need to, and there's a real threat to the Jewish character of Israel. But Lehava and 3 other organizations devote their whole lives to supposedly save Jewish women from being taken by Israeli Arab men. This is the way of racists from time immemorial to say that the minority is hypersexual and on the, it just isn't true. And yet Jamal Julani has lost his memory, has lost his ability to play basketball, lost the English that he knew, and is a traumatized young man at home because this group decided to deal with him.
So I think we'll go to questions. I'm sure people have lots of questions about everything we've spoken about. In Melbourne, maybe, do we want to start? Rick at TBI, maybe do you want to turn on your video and have someone come to the front and ask a question? While we do that, if there are people on who are watching the webinar at home, you can type your question into the Q&A box.
Just so if you can be seen, then Anat can see you.
Eva.
Hi, I've got a question. I want to ask you, where are we up to with the actual area that's allowed for Neshot Kotel without being, feeling like we're in a cage? I saw that there was a fenced off area for everybody else finally, so we didn't have to feel fenced off. And also, the other question is there some dissension between the Conservatives and the Reform as far as what we're going to accept from the rabbi of the Kotel for what we're going to agree on? There was some idea that the Conservatives were being giving in a sense and saying, well, we're prepared to, and that would be very bad, I think, for the Reform and Conservative to break in their unity in what we want. Is there some dissension going on there or not? Thanks.
So thank you, Eva, and thank you for coming to our office every time with ready for action. First, about going into a pen. The Jerusalem police have for 18 months now have asked women of the wall to walk into a pen. It is a caged area, and it's supposedly for our own safety. We decided not to go into the pen on Rosh Chodesh Adar, never going in there again. What the police did is, once we situated ourselves in the middle of the women's section around us, fine, but we're a pen. The reason is that the pen became skirted to the point that it was in the toilet. That's it. And I'm glad about this section where we belong. As for dissent, it's not exactly dissent, but there is a lively discussion between the partners, and I'm reminding you, the partners in the Kotel agreement are all the federations of North America, the Jewish Agency, the Reform movement in Israel and abroad, the conservative movement in Israel abroad, and the Women of the Wall. This is a very huge coalition. It represents millions of Jews. I'd be surprised if there wasn't a healthy argument there. And we're wondering about what would be the best way for us to still win. If you caught echo, discuss, should we allow the government to build it a stage out, yanking the soul out of should we hold on to our guns and maybe lose everything? Should we waste time and wait for the government to change? Should we withdraw from the Supreme Court petition? I am glad that we're part of a coalition that's willing to put all these questions on the table and have a lively dialogue, because our collective minds have been so far much better than our individual ones. And I hope that when we question everything, we may come up with a winning strategy, because a lot is at stake. We've fought for 30 years. We're ready for another marathon, but we'd like to be as strategic as possible and together as possible. So we're still united, but we are unique in our opinions, and we're meeting and we're talking and we're dialoguing. I wish the whole Jewish people were running as open and as flexible and as respectful as our coalition is with these challenges.
I think there's any Jewish group that could ever achieve consensus. So it's good there's the discussion. At Emmanuel Synagogue, is there a question there? Webinar, if you want, you can type your question into the...
No, no question.
You've got a question there, Ollie, and Emmanuel? No.
No.
Okay.
ענת, את יכולה לשמוע אותי?
כן, שומעת אותך מצוין.
יופי. So I'll ask it in English. The question is, you mentioned that Israel has these fabulous laws but no enforcement. We see so many times that there's issues that are resolved at the high court that then are undermined either by the enforcement authorities or by legislature trying to undermine the authorities of the courts themselves. In the current government and for the foreseeable future, what hope do you have that actually enforcement of these great laws on the books can happen?
The issue in racism is different than the challenge that you mentioned. The challenge that you mentioned characterizes our struggles on issues of religion and state. We win in court, and then even though we won, it is the law so that the winning loses. But in racism, it's different. The police are willing, let's see, Chief Rabbi of Tzfat, citing on a daily basis. He talks to people, even though the largest and 60 of the healers of our people, there is this school funding to the point of, 1.5 is inciting against renting an apartment to a nursing student in Tzfat. We sued him for this incitement. He claimed that he regrets it. He wrote an apology the size of a stamp. This incitement still goes on. We demanded that the attorney
Okay,
Can you hear me?
Have you got us back again?
wave your hand if you can hear me.
Yeah, we're back.
Great.
Okay. The Ministry of Justice said no need to discipline him. I will talk to him. Since she talked to him, he continues with his incitement. Let me just say, if he was an imam and he was inciting against Jews in his own town, he would be in jail today. 9 months today. This is a difference in enforcement that we have to fight. And we are going to get to the Supreme Court with the Chief Rabbi of Tzfat. I can say that in this last year, we stopped this rabbi from becoming Chief Rabbi of Jerusalem, Chief Rabbi of Israel. With his racist attitudes, he believes he's fit to be the Chief Rabbi of Israel. Knowing that 2 of our chief rabbis right now are serving time in jail, maybe he fits the bill more than we know.
So there's another question in Melbourne. Daniel's written a question here that I'm not sure I understand. So maybe Daniel you could write it again and elaborate a bit more. The question is, what are the practical ways a woman can influence others' beliefs and actions? Do you want to have a go at answering that, or should maybe Daniel, if you want to retype it and give a bit more text?
Well, I believe that feminism is the revolutionary notion that women are people. So the question is, how can a person influence what happens in Israel? I can say that a person like Nicole Maor Center from Sydney has changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of Israelis. People who had deportation letters in their hands have a proud identification card now, and they're proud Israelis. One person can make a huge amount of difference. You don't need to be a lawyer or a doctor, or you can have many other professions, and just if you come to Israel, focus on something that gets you good and angry, you're not coming to Israel. That doesn't mean you can choose the issue that really boils your blood. Link with the Israelis who want to make a difference, and together we can make a difference. I believe in hope. It's the anthem of our country, Tikva. And doesn't come in very, comes from the word kav, which means a thin string. It appears in the book of Joshua, the first chapter, where it says, "Vatikshor tikvat chut hashani." She tied the beginning of a string to her window. That's it, string. Don't misunderstand. Our elder fathers and parents knew the word for cable and for rope. They chose string to show that hope comes in small doses, a flimsy little thing, but very powerful. So let's hold on to tikva. I believe in change in Israel. I have some experience in that. And I invite you all to take part in this. Let's be partners on this.
Rick, you had a question there in Melbourne, I think.
Yeah, I won't put the video on because it breaks up the audio we're getting from you. So the question is, the work that you're doing with the religious community, with the women of the religious community, how do you see that building a coalition that can help have them challenge the hegemony of orthodoxy?
Big time. You know, when we started representing the women of Bet Shemesh 6 years ago, they asked us as their number one request to keep our profile down. We call the reform movement because you're the only ones available, but it would be very unpleasant for us, even difficult for us, if it is known that the reform movement is helpful. Please keep a low profile. We low profile. Bet Shemesh, when they appeared in the paper, it said that they came and spoke for themselves. It didn't mention who their lawyers were and who was doing all the work, the infrastructure. They've changed. They are now proud to say to anyone who would ask, the reform, we're the only one to answer the phone, and we are proud to link hands with progressive Jews who believe in our values. They are partners with us now. We are personal friends with them. One of them became a law student following the head of our legal department. The birthday of the head of our was mentioned in the local paper of Bet Shemesh as an event because the women of Bet Shemesh were celebrating that. As we they became more confident in linking arms with us, because what we're fighting for is much bigger than what divides us. We found that the Orthodox women and the Reform and conservative and liberal voices in Israel can work very well together. We have our differences, and yet we are there for each other. Yes, I think that these women are threatening the hegemony of the ultra-Orthodox monopoly in Israel in a very profound way. Yesterday, the Orthodox group called Tzohar opened a competing kashrut inspection system to the Rabbanut, and the women and the people they're using as kashrut inspectors are women, Orthodox women. That's the sound of the revolution. I would like to share with you that the obsession about modesty in the Orthodox world is because of these women. These women are educated. These women demand to be contended with. And the rabbis are so concerned with their status in the family that that's why we see in these last few years so much obsession with modesty. You think you're so clever? You sit in the back of the bus. You think you're so smart? You move when I want to sit have to sit in a plane going to Israel. I won't be sitting next to a woman. You think you're smart? You don't go on stage and receive a prize. You walk on this sidewalk, not on that sidewalk. These are all new phenomena in Israel. And what's propelling them and moving them are rabbis who are so concerned about the new empowered Orthodox women. More power to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I hope that you'll actually hear more from NIF towards later in the year as we start to support more and more of these kinds of activities. In Sydney, there's a question at Emmanuel. I think this might be our last one. No pressure. Are you guys there at Emmanuel?
question concerns the role of the diaspora and how you see it. You did state something at the beginning about people in the diaspora and their need to speak out. We recently saw a video of Dennis Prager vehemently castigating anyone in the diaspora who dares to pass an opinion about what affects Israelis who live in the country and who are affected by events there, whereas the diaspora should not have the same right to criticize. What is your view on this?
Well, I want to say that to tell a Jew to shut up about something they're passionate about is quite futile. And I believe that if Israelis think, and I told you, 90% of Israelis believe that support of the diaspora of Israel is crucial and very, very important. If we think that, then we have to also represent the Jewish values of the diaspora. And I can't think of a better dialogue or the most riveting dialogue than you and I discussing what are Jewish values? What are the Jewish values of the Jewish state? And you have a place at the table. There's no question in my mind that Jews all over the world have to take part in the question of what are the Jewish values of the Jewish state and how are they played out in our everyday life. And if I'm telling you, sister, we're not going to get another chance at a sovereign Jewish state. If we screw up with this one, there won't be another experiment like that. This is probably the most important experiment of our lifetime, how to build a state according to our values. And we should be thinking long and hard, what are our Jewish values? And you and I, members of NIF, share a few ideas. One, love is what remains after we know the truth. We will talk truth about Israel. I will not romanticize, tell you that it's milk and honey. You and I will talk how honey is produced. Everyone loves honey, but people rarely think it's produced by an insect and it comes through her behind. Okay? We will talk about how honey is made. And we will say that we will talk truth to each other. And I believe that Israel is worth loving, supporting, encouraging, even though I know the warts on Israel's behind. I know the mistakes and the horrible policies that we implement in some instances. I also know our marvelous victories. And I know that this is our one chance of having a sovereign Jewish state. And we are partners in making it the good one. Anyone telling you that you should put up and shut up is actually saying that you will stop having a relationship with Israel. You cannot engage with a country as an ATM. You are not an ATM. You are a living, thinking Jew. And I care about what you think. Yes, I think it's very important that diaspora Jews support Israel. And I also think it's extremely important that we listen to you. What are the Jewish values you believe in? Only then would this be a joint project of all the Jewish people for the first time in 2,000 years to run our own affairs. I wish you a happy Purim. And like Mordechai is saying to Esther, he says to her, if you be silent on this day, other people will speak and save the Jewish people. So don't be silent, not on this day, not on any day. This is the time to speak up. Money talks, but this is a time for you and I to speak up. And if there is a question that you have, we Israelis who support you and you support us, we are at the end of a computer. We would love to talk to you. Thank you, Liam, for this opportunity. It's a wonderful opportunity. I wish you a Chag Sameach, happy Purim.
So thank you so much, Anat. That was really fabulous. A quick thank you as well to TBI and Emmanuel. That sounds like applause, very distant, half a world away. Thank you, Emmanuel and TBI. Thank you to the UPJ. Thank you, Anat. The very last thing I'll say, because like you said, money talks, we have the right to speak up. Let's apply our philanthropic ability to our values and invest in things that we believe in. And one of those things is, like I said before, the Racism Crisis Center at IRAC and NIF. Please go online and make a contribution to this important project. If you write in it, I want this to go to IRAC, that's where 100% of it goes. And so that's, I think, a good place to end. Thank you again, Anat. Thank you everyone for coming, and look forward to seeing everyone soon. Thank you.